Thinking back to when I first started on the swim, didn't really have any pain on the swim, and I guess my game plan going into the swim was to take the swim as much of a warm up period as possible. I know it is a 2.4 mile swim, but I wanted to be as warmed up as possible for the bike and for the run, using that first initial hour and a half of swimming to kind of get all the muscles, the ligaments, the joints warmed up. And so I was not actually planning on pushing super hard in the swim. And for my swim, I actually came through that very, very good. I came out of the water not feeling any pain anywhere. I didn't feel like I had pushed beyond a warm up phase. And so I think I planned my swim kind of how I wanted to, just to get myself ready for the bike. The game plan for the bike was to bike at a decent pace that's not going to lose me too much time in the overall event, but also don't push too hard where I come off the bike and I'm pretty sore going into the marathon. So I kept my heart rate pretty low during the bike. I think I averaged somewhere around 130 or maybe even just below 130. So that gives you an idea as to how hard I was working during the bike. If the one thing I do remember was, I think it was around like mile 80-ish or 85, I started to get a little bit of quad cramping, just a little bit of hamstring cramping, but that lasted for about maybe a mile. There were some really steep hills out there, and I remember on the final steep hill, which maybe was even mile 85, I got a little bit of cramping as I was pushing up that final hill. Again, not trying to push too hard, but after being on the bike for 4.5 hours, I started to feel just a little bit of cramping. And so that was where I was like, okay, I kind of got an idea as to how hard I'd been pushing, where I thought my muscles were at. And so I dialed back a little bit for the remainder of the ride, and I did increase my hydration. I started to drink a little bit more because that was an indication that maybe I was a little bit dehydrated. Maybe I had a little bit not enough salt in my body, so I started to go on the salt tabs and salt stick quite a bit from there to the finish. I had probably 35 miles, an hour and a half to start consuming as much salt and hydration as possible, just to get myself as ready for the marathon as you can be. Having never done a marathon, I didn't really know for sure what to expect. All I knew is that I didn't want to push too hard, at least for the first 15, 18, 20 miles especially. And so I kind of started off with a nice easy pace of, I think it was like 950-ish. And the first 5 miles felt very, very good. And I think it was around mile 7 or 8 I started to actually get that was the most painful part of my entire race, which was I think mile 8 to mile 13. I just started to get a lot of pain in my traps, a lot of pain in my lats on the side, and I'm assuming that's probably mostly from the swim and probably the position fatigue on the bike. And I started to get some pain actually in one part of my left leg on the left side, and I don't know if it was like some sort of an ACL or else I don't know. It could have been a ligament, it could have been a joint, not for sure. But anyways, those 4 miles, I just started to feel a little bit of pain, and just kind of everywhere. My feet were starting to get a little bit of soreness. And then at mile 13, they give you a special needs option you can put out a bag that you can have whatever you want in it. So in my special needs bag, I put ibuprofen, I put some Coke in there. I actually had a Bang energy drink. I had a Uncrustable, a bunch more salt. And so I geared up on all that stuff. And also I had another fresh pair of socks with a bunch of anti-chafe cream. So mile 13 came into that special needs spot. Right away took my shoes off, socks off, put new anti-chafe cream all over my feet, put a fresh pair of socks on, laced the shoes up, drank half a bottle of Coke, had a sip or two of the Bang, and then I think I took 2 ibuprofens and just right away started pulling more salt into the body. I'd restocked on all my salt stick tabs. and these caps too. And I think that was realistically, I mean, that probably saved my marathon. Had I not done that, I'm not sure how I would have came out of the marathon. Because then from 13 to 15, I could tell that my body was starting to absorb the salt. It was starting to absorb the ibuprofen. I just started to feel way better from 13 to 15. And then from 15 to about 23 is probably the best part of my my race period. I was running at a pace that felt very comfortable. Everything was feeling great. I was really just loving the race. And so I didn't have any pain from 15 to 22, 23-ish. And then from 23 to 26, I kept trying to increase my pace, and I started to feel a little bit of that same pain as I had earlier. My feet started to get a little bit sore. Started to feel the quads were starting to get a lot more sore for sure between 15 and 20 or 22 and 20, and especially, or no, 23 to the final is where I started to feel that quad pain starting to come back in. And upon finishing, that was the first thing I noticed is my quads were just, I mean, they were just destroyed. You know, trying to, there's some, the people, I think they call them race proctors, they grab you right away as you finish the race. And I think the reason is once you finish, kind of the understanding I have is everything kind of relaxes. Your body's like, okay, we're done. And that's where sometimes people just collapse. So they have two proctors that'll right away grab each arm, and they kind of walk with you for a minute or two just to see how you're doing. And during that first couple minutes of walking, I could tell that my quads were pretty beat up and pretty wrecked. And so I remember trying to sit down in a chair, and I had like no quad strength to sit down in the chair. And then getting out of a chair, I just couldn't do it. Like I had to use either my arms to push off the bottom of the chair, or else I had to grab someone to give me a pull out of a chair. The time I finished, it was mostly quad pain. I had some low back, a little bit. I had a little bit of trap pain. I'm sure that's just from my shoulders bouncing throughout the event. And then also my feet, I had a few blisters that developed on my right foot. And besides that, I had, I would say the rest of my body felt very, very good. So the rest of that day, like I said, there was a couple times where I'd be walking down a negative grade or else walking downstairs. I mean, if any of you have done, like, say, a heavy day of squatting or heavy day of leg work, you kind of know how your legs get a little jittery and they kind of feel like they're going to give out. Well, that's what happened to me. My legs were just, I mean, it was like a leg day times 1,000. It felt like I just had, I mean, my legs, my quads especially, felt like someone was just hit my quad both sides with a big hammer or something. And I have this major Charlie horse that is just continuously there, where you try and walk down a step, up a step, down a grade. Walking up grade seemed fine, but down is like the legs just kept wanting to give out. So, you know, I knew that they were going to be in pretty tough shape after. I just didn't know how bad.